Thank you all, and thank Jerry for asking me just to make a few comments. This will be very, very brief. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of points, some of which Jerry has already brought up. I'm also presaging in some ways just by making a few comments in advance the wonderful talk you're about to hear from Dr. Jenny Gallup about where the research efforts and other clinical trial efforts are going in trying to intervene in this disorder, Lowe Syndrome. So when I think of the LSA, I think of 5 I's. They are infrastructure, information, investigation, intervention, and inclusion. And I'm going to touch on each of those very, very briefly. So first of all, let's talk about infrastructure. What has the LSA done to develop infrastructure to help with families and children with Lowe syndrome? Well, first, there's the LSA website. And on this website now are links to lots of useful sites, also previous videos. For example, Dr. Brewer's wonderful talk about kidney problems in Lowe syndrome. That will be on the website. She has also promised me that she's going to go through her presentation and put together a glossary. So of all the terms you heard that sort of went by, CKD or cystatin, that there's going to actually be on the glossary a list of all those terms and what they mean. Not just for you, but also for physicians and other caregivers who interact with your children. Also, there's the Lowe Syndrome Registry, and something I really do want to emphasize, citizen health. Let me explain something. When one is trying to develop a new therapy, the regulatory agencies are going to ask one, among other important questions, the most important question they're going to ask is, how do you know that what you're doing improves the care of these people? How do you know that it's beneficial to them? Well, the usual way that's done, like in something common like lung cancer or coronary artery disease or something like that, is you do a trial where you pick people at random and you say, okay, you're not going to get the treatment, you are going to get the treatment. Just like the raffle you just had, you get the treatment, you don't get the treatment, etc. We collect 2 different groups of people, one who get the treatment, one who don't, picked at random, and then you compare the outcome. You can't do that with a rare disease. It would take you 100 years to develop enough people to be able to do that. So the alternative is what they call natural history, which is to collect information about this disease by looking at what has been the problems, the issues that have arisen in people who have this disorder. Well, collecting that information can be very time-consuming and very costly. And what Citizen Health has developed, leveraging off of a federal requirement, which is called the information exchanges, that basically says all medical information of people in the United States belongs to each individual. It's your information. It doesn't belong to the place where you had the study done. So what Citizen Health does is it says, okay, all of these institutions, all these hospitals, all these doctors, they are required to make that information available with your consent. And what Citizen Health does is it makes it easy to grab all the information, whether it's from 3 providers, 10 providers, 20 providers, it doesn't matter how many, to pull them all together if you agree. And you don't have to agree 20 times for 20 different providers. You only have to agree once. Such natural history studies collected by Citizen Health have already been used successfully to get a drug approved for a rare epilepsy disorder. So FDA accepts natural history studies done by collecting medical information. And that is a way of streamlining this problem so that then if you do intervene, if you do try a new therapy, they can look at it and say, oh, well, what's happened in the past is such and such. Now we can see that things have changed when you've done this intervention, when you've used this drug or whatever it is that you're doing. You have improved things. So I just want to emphasize, I know Jerry has emphasized it, but I want to emphasize it again. Citizen Health is a platform to make it easy to collect very complex data. I mean, for example, Dr. Brewer talked about looking at the chemistries and the various substances that are measured for renal over time. Those all get pulled out and pulled into a central database by the Citizen Health platform. So I just want to emphasize that this is an important part of infrastructure. It's why the LSA has been sort of hammering away at this issue of trying to have a registry, because we have to be able to have natural history studies in order to test new treatments, okay? Information. Living with Lowe syndrome, I know you've heard about that for decades, but what you don't realize is that's probably the single greatest source of information about Lowe syndrome up until once we get Citizen Health up and going. It's going to pull out much more information. What the Living with Lowe syndrome booklet has, however, that Citizen Health won't have, and that most natural history studies won't have, is the parents' and the siblings' impressions of what's going on with children and with adults, with relatives with Lowe syndrome. So the combination of patient-reported outcomes for living with Lowe syndrome and the medical information pulled through Citizen Health will be a very powerful combination to really give us a picture. Educational videos, you'll hear from Dr. Gallup, and you'll be able to see on the website that there are educational videos that are available. For example, the Dr. Tassini's and Dr. Giantonio's work that's available. These are invaluable for educating physicians and other care providers, as well as yourselves, to be able to look at. That's infrastructure. It doesn't just happen. Someone has to do it. Someone has to make it happen. And that's what the LSA has been doing. The digital newsletters you've been getting, and of course, there's the biannual conference. I was very happy yesterday during the sessions where I sort of asked the Medical Scientific Advisory Board. People just sat down at tables where a topic was being discussed that they were interested in. I mean, I just stood there and watched. People were so engaged discussing their children's problems or their relatives' problems around issues of either the eye or dental or the research aspects. Really engaged, completely informal. You could get up, move, change tables. I think it was a format that was tried. I think this is the first time it's been tried, and I think it was very successful. So information flow, very important part of what the LSA does. Investigation. The LSA has supported research into the underlying mechanisms of Lowe syndrome, understanding why a defect in this gene causes the complicated and very complex disorder that we refer to as Lowe syndrome, forms the basis for rational, intelligent, therapeutic design. If you can understand why this is happening, it gives you a huge clue to say, okay, well then if we manipulate this, if we change that, if we fix that gene, if we do this, we can presumably, potentially make a difference. If it's a complete black box and you don't know anything about what's going on, it's very difficult to develop adequate therapy. They've also organized research conferences where there's new information that's exchanged. We heard there's a researcher in India who's doing phenomenally good work in understanding the basics of Lowe syndrome, and in particular in the neurological, in the nervous system. And I think many of us at the meeting were really unaware of the depth and the power of what this individual in the institute in India was doing. We also had a wonderful view of what's going on at the TGEM Institute in Naples, where there's fantastic work going on in cell biology. And of course, we have managed most successfully to bring on board, I was going to use the word seduce, but I probably shouldn't, bring on board Dr. Jenny Gallup from Cambridge, United Kingdom, who has really become engaged in the Lowe syndrome problem as an outgrowth of her fundamental basic research interests in the cell biology of phosphodienosydes. And you can establish collaborations. This is something the LSA has facilitated and has made possible. Intervention. You're going to hear a lot more about this from Dr. Gallup. I'm not going to go into any detail, except there are multiple pathways that are being attempted to try to intervene and improve the situation. There are ways of manipulating the sort of chemical milieu, the chemical surroundings of the Lowe's gene product, the protein, to try to make things better. There are ways of trying to say, okay, if you have an alteration in this gene which is altering the protein in a certain way, can we apply a molecule which will make that protein start working again? And this may sound crazy. If you have a mutation in the gene that changes the protein, how do you make the protein work again? Well, sometimes what these mutations do is they just make the protein take a wrong shape. And you add a small molecule, and it makes it take on a new shape. How do I know this works? It has absolutely revolutionized the treatment of cystic fibrosis. There are drugs now that take cystic fibrosis protein, which does not work, doesn't get to where it's supposed to go in the cell, it doesn't work. You put this molecule in, people take this drug, the protein magically goes to the surface of the cells where it's supposed to go and actually works. So these is a very important approach that's being taken by Dr. Aguilar in Indiana. And then finally, also the LSA maintains contact with groups working on gene therapy. We have contacts with a group in Europe that's working on gene therapy. We have Dr. Yang's son who's working on gene therapy. So sort of keeping these people talking to each other and trying different approaches is really an important part of promoting intervention. Then finally, I've already touched on this, inclusion. By facilitating global collaboration, supporting researchers globally by networking with conferences, but also eliminating dues for LSA and supporting attendance at the conference for people who otherwise would not be able to attend. That kind of inclusion is something that the LSA is really, really dedicated to. So those are the 5 I's. So LSA is one organization. I've been watching it develop. I've been watching it become really a multifaceted organization with many missions. The 5 I's are each one represents multiple different missions. And I think what I would like to do is I would just like to extend my gratitude over these many decades of being able to interact with the LSA, with families that participate, who are carrying the need to take care of children with this very complex disorder, and with the many people who participate in making the LSA work as a labor of love. And I just want to say that in particular, I want to thank Jerry Kubicki, and all the previous presidents that I've interacted with in Texas and in Massachusetts and in all the other places where the presidents have come for doing a terrific job that promotes our ability to really move things along, which you will hear in just a minute from Dr. Gallup. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2 years.